Ancient cities once blossomed in the heart of deserts. This is the story of how they mastered water against impossible odds. By the end of this journey, you will see human potential in a completely new light. How did entire civilizations flourish where rain almost never falls? What hidden rivers did they discover beneath the sand? Their solutions were not just about survival, but about brilliant adaptation. We will uncover the stories of how they engineered water in landscapes that seemed designed to withhold it. What does it truly mean to be resourceful when everything is on the line? A vast sun-baked emptiness stretches to the horizon, a landscape defined by its absence of water. Yet here, in the least likely of places, great cities once rose from the sands. This is the desert's great paradox. How could bustling centers of tens of thousands sustain themselves in lands that might see less than 10 inches of rain in an entire year? The answer lies not in magic, but in a profound form of intelligence. These civilizations cultivated a deep, systemic understanding of water, a knowledge so complete it transformed their relationship with the desert itself. They did not see water as a scarce commodity to be hoarded in fear. Instead, they viewed it as a precious and predictable force to be understood, guided, and welcomed. This water intelligence became their greatest asset. It allowed them to build networks of oasis cities, lush islands of green that served as vital hubs along sprawling caravan routes. Imagine the sight of a weary merchant caravan, having crossed miles of barren dunes, finally arriving at a city shimmering with date palms and gardens. These were not mere pit stops, they were centers of commerce, culture, and innovation, all made possible by mastering the desert's hidden treasure. The secret to their success was an engineering ingenuity that turned the desert's own rules against it. A vertical shaft descends into the cool earth, the first sign of a hidden river flowing through stone. This was the beginning of a qanat, a 3,000-year-old invention that turned mountains into lifelines. In the heart of ancient Persia, engineers discovered that rain and snowmelt seeped deep into the ground, collecting in vast, hidden reservoirs within the rock layers at the base of mountain ranges. Their genius was not in creating water, but in learning how to invite it on a long, slow journey across the desert. They would dig a mother well, tapping directly into this saturated rock. Then, with astonishing precision, they would begin carving a gently sloping underground tunnel, sometimes stretching for dozens of miles, all the way to a settlement in the arid valley below. Gravity did all the work, carrying the water silently through the dark. But how do you build a tunnel that long without it collapsing or losing its way? The answer was a series of vertical shafts, dug from the surface straight down to the tunnel's path every 20 to 50 meters. These shafts served two brilliant purposes. They provided air for the diggers and a way to remove the excavated earth, but they also acted as permanent maintenance access points for generations to come. The most critical calculation, however, was the slope. The gradient of the tunnel had to be perfect. If it was too steep, the rushing water would tear the walls apart. If it was too gentle, the water would simply pool and stagnate, refusing to flow. This was engineering of the highest order, achieved with simple tools and profound understanding. This remarkable technology transformed the relationship between people and the desert. Because the water flowed entirely underground, it was protected from the relentless sun and wind, with almost no water lost to evaporation. What emerged at the tunnel's end, in the middle of a sun-scorched plain, was a sudden, miraculous outpouring of fresh, cool water. This was the birth of an oasis, a lush garden that could support not just date palms and crops, but entire cities. The Kanat's influence was immense, spreading along trade routes from the deserts of China all the way to North Africa. In places like Morocco, these systems, known there as Qatara, are still in use today, a testament to an engineering solution so elegant it has sustained life for millennia. This was more than just digging a ditch. It was a way of thinking in 3 dimensions, of seeing the hidden connections between mountain, aquifer, and valley, and patiently guiding water across impossible landscapes. While the Kanat mastered the horizontal journey of water, another civilization was building downwards into the earth itself. In the arid landscapes of Western India, architects and engineers created breathtaking subterranean temples dedicated entirely to water. These were the stepwells, vast inverted pyramids carved into the ground. The concept was straightforward in its purpose, to provide reliable access to a receding water table, but its execution was nothing short of architectural poetry. During the long, dry season, the water level would slowly fall. A simple well with a bucket would become useless, its life-giving water just out of reach. The stepwell solved this with a simple yet monumental idea. Instead of reaching down, you could simply walk down. A grand, symmetrical staircase descended level after level, leading directly to the water's edge no matter how deep it had retreated. This was water security carved in stone, but these structures were far more than just functional stairs. They were masterpieces of community design. The entire structure was a marvel of passive cooling. As you descended, the temperature would drop noticeably, the stone walls acting as a natural insulator against the blistering heat above. The water itself was naturally filtered and cooled by the stone lining the well, creating a reservoir of pure, fresh water. And the builders did not stop there. They transformed these deep pits into places of stunning beauty. Intricate carvings of deities and mythological scenes covered every surface. Ornate columns and shaded pavilions were built at various landings, creating cool, sheltered spaces for rest and conversation. This is where the stepwell reveals its true genius. It was never just a water source, it was a vibrant social heart. For travelers crossing the harsh desert, it was a life-saving oasis, a place to rest weary feet and drink deeply in the cool shade. For the local community, it was a daily gathering place, especially for women who would come to collect water and share news, their voices echoing softly in the cavernous space. The stepwell also served as a serene backdrop for rituals and ceremonies, a physical manifestation of the deep cultural and spiritual reverence for water. In the stepwell, the practical need for survival was seamlessly woven together with the human needs for community, art, and meaning. It was a complete ecosystem, a sanctuary that nurtured both the body and the spirit in the heart of the desert. Deep within a narrow desert canyon, the Nabateans carved a kingdom from stone. Their capital, Petra, appears as a city of majestic facades, but its true genius lies hidden in the rock itself. The Nabateans were masters of water harvesting, and they engineered their entire city to capture, control, and conserve every single drop of water that nature provided. In a land defined by scarcity, they built a system of such sophistication that it turned a seasonal river valley into a perennial oasis. Their secret was an invisible web of hydraulics. They coated the sheer canyon walls with a special, waterproof cement, transforming the natural rock into a collection surface. Then, they carved channels and diversion dams into the cliffs, creating a network that guided the precious rainwater away from the main gorge and into a series of massive underground cisterns. This was their most critical innovation. The desert here is not a place of gentle rain, but of sudden, violent flash floods. A dry riverbed could become a raging torrent in minutes, capable of destroying everything in its path. The Nabateans did not try to fight this force. Instead, they understood it. They calculated the entire watershed, the vast area of land that channels water into their valley. By building diversion dams high in the side canyons, they could safely redirect the initial destructive surge of a flood, taming the water and funneling it into their storage chambers. This gave them a dual victory. They protected their city from destruction while simultaneously filling their reservoirs for the long, dry months ahead. Their hidden hydraulics meant that even during a severe drought, the city of Petra could support a population of tens of thousands. This control over water translated directly into power. Petra became the undisputed hub of the incense trade, a wealthy kingdom where caravans laden with riches could find security and refreshment. The Nabateans demonstrated that in a desert environment, controlling water was synonymous with controlling destiny. Their entire civilization was built not on finding a mystical source of water, but on a revolutionary observation of natural patterns. They watched how water moved across the landscape during a storm, and they engineered a solution that worked in harmony with that flow. It was a testament to human ingenuity, proving that the most powerful solutions often come from understanding a system rather than conquering it. High on a barren coastal hillside, a silent, ghostly net stands against the wind. It appears to be capturing nothing but mist, yet from its base, a steady trickle of water flows into a waiting channel. This is not magic, it is ancient engineering. In the hyper-arid expanse of the Atacama Desert, one of the driest places on Earth, the Chinchorro people and other cultures perfected the art of harvesting water directly from the air. Their technology was the fog net, a system so elegantly simple it feels almost like a secret whispered by the atmosphere itself. The principle relies on a perfect alignment of geography and climate. Cool, humid air from the ocean is pushed inland, where it condenses into a thick, persistent fog as it encounters the steep slopes of coastal hills. The nets are positioned as barriers to this moving fog. As the countless microscopic water droplets are forced through the fine mesh, they collide and coalesce into larger, heavier drops. Gravity then takes over, pulling the accumulated water down the net in tiny rivulets that merge into a continuous, gentle stream. The real ingenuity, however, lay in generations of refinement. These early engineers were the first material scientists, experimenting with different weaves, fibers, and angles to see which configuration captured the most moisture. They learned that a tightly woven net made from local reeds or plant fibers could outperform a loose one, and that orienting the net perpendicular to the prevailing wind direction was crucial for a good yield. This was not a one-size-fits-all solution. It was a deeply localized technology, tailored to the specific behaviors of the fog in each unique valley and hill. The impact of this innovation was profound. In landscapes that might see measurable rainfall only once a decade, communities were able to establish reliable sources of fresh water. Some even developed small-scale agricultural systems, cultivating plots of land that were sustained almost entirely by these atmospheric rivers. The fog net represents a different kind of intelligence from the monumental Kanat or the architectural stepwell. It is a quiet, patient intelligence that looks not down at the ground or up at the sky, but straight into the invisible moisture drifting on the breeze. It is the ultimate demonstration of working with environmental conditions rather than struggling against them, of finding abundance in what seems like empty air. Mountains themselves became canvases for agricultural art, their slopes painstakingly carved into vast green stairways ascending toward the sky. This is the legacy of terrace farming, a breathtaking transformation of impossible terrain into lush, productive land. In stark desert environments, a steep mountainside is a difficult place to grow anything. When rain does fall, it does not linger. It simply races down the slope, taking the precious topsoil with it in a destructive torrent. Ancient farmers observed this problem and engineered a brilliant step-by-step solution. They built strong, stone-retaining walls to create a series of level platforms, each one a flat planting bed. This simple act of reshaping the land changed the entire hydrological equation. Instead of water rushing away, it was forced to slow down and sink in. Each individual terrace became a miniature reservoir, its soil soaking up the rainfall like a sponge. Any excess water would then flow gently, not violently, to the next level down through carefully placed stone channels, ensuring that not a single drop was wasted. This was a cascade of conservation, a system that worked in perfect harmony with gravity. The true mastery of this approach is visible in places like the towering highlands of Yemen or the precipitous Andes of Peru. In these arid regions, civilizations created vertical farms that turned entire mountain ranges into sources of sustenance. By maximizing every available inch of flat land across a vast vertical expanse, they could cultivate an incredible diversity of crops, from grains and vegetables to fruit trees, all on slopes that would otherwise be barren. The terraces did more than just control water, they created unique microclimates. The stone walls absorbed heat during the day and released it slowly through the cool night, protecting tender plants from frost. This careful engineering demonstrates a profound philosophical shift. It was not about dominating the landscape, but about collaborating with it. These farmers looked at a formidable, water-shedding mountain and saw not an obstacle, but an opportunity. They understood the natural forces of erosion and gravity, and they designed a system that used those very same forces to create life and stability. The silent flow of water through a qanat, the perfect descent of a stepwell, these were not happy accidents. They were the products of precise calculation, a mathematics of survival etched not on parchment, but into the landscape itself. Long before modern engineering formulas, ancient hydrologists were masters of applied geometry and physics. Their tools were the stars overhead and the proportions of the human body. To align a qanat tunnel for miles with an unerringly gentle slope, they used celestial navigation, sighting on specific stars to maintain a straight course deep underground. For measurements, they used a universal and always available ruler, the human form. A cubit was the length from elbow to fingertip, a span the width of an outstretched hand. These were not rough estimates, they were standardized units, repeated with astonishing consistency to ensure that every channel, every cistern, was built to exact specifications. This mathematical thinking extended to the most critical social question: who gets how much water and when? In desert communities, fair water distribution was a matter of life and death. This led to the creation of incredibly sophisticated proportional allocation systems, and farmers' water share was not a random amount. It was a precise calculation based on the size of his land, the type of crops he was growing, and the current seasonal flow of the aqueduct. A date palm orchard, with its deep roots and high value, might be allocated a larger share of water per unit of land than a field of barley. These were complex mathematical relationships, balancing multiple variables to ensure the entire community could thrive. This vital knowledge was far too important to be written down and risk being lost or stolen. Instead, it was woven into the fabric of culture itself. The formulas for distribution were encoded into oral traditions, recited in songs, and embedded in the rhythmic patterns of local poetry. The specific timing for opening and closing irrigation gates was remembered through community rituals and stories, making the calendar of water a lived experience for everyone. The very architecture of water structures often held these mathematical secrets. with the proportions of a stepwell's steps or the dimensions of a diversion channel reflecting generations of accumulated hydraulic data. This reveals a profound truth about these civilizations. Their survival demanded more than just hard labor. It required a deep, intellectual engagement with the natural world. They were not just builders, they were geometers, astronomers, and systems thinkers, whose greatest equations were written in water and stone, ensuring life could flow against all odds. A complex water system is a marvel of engineering, but without the right society to manage it, it would quickly fall into disrepair or conflict. The true foundation of these desert civilizations was not just the stone of their aqueducts, but the invisible architecture of their social agreements. Managing a shared qanat or a communal stepwell required a level of cooperation that shaped their entire concept of community and governance. This led to the creation of some of history's earliest and most intricate legal systems, all centered on a single, vital question. How do you fairly share what everyone needs to survive? In many of these cultures, the most important person in a village was not a king or a warrior, but the water master. This individual, often elected by the community for their wisdom and fairness, held the profound responsibility of allocating water shares according to ancient, agreed-upon rules. Their decisions were guided by complex calculations that considered the size of a family's plot, the type of crops they grew, and the current season's flow. A date palm, for instance, might be granted a larger water allowance than a field of wheat, reflecting its longer growth cycle and higher value to the community's economy. This was not a random distribution. It was a precise mathematical balancing act performed for the good of all. To formalize these decisions, societies established water courts and irrigation cooperatives. These were gatherings where disputes could be settled not with force, but with testimony and evidence. Neighbors would bring their grievances before a council of elders, who would consult oral histories and traditional laws to determine a just outcome. The enforcement of these rulings was a community affair because everyone had a vested interest in maintaining the peace and the function of the system. In a very real sense, your water right was a form of property, sometimes even more valuable than the land itself. A farmer might own a fertile plot, but without a guaranteed share of water from the communal qanat, that land was worthless. This created a unique economic system where water, not dirt, was the ultimate currency. The maintenance of these vast systems also depended on collective labor. Every family that benefited from the qanat was required to contribute a certain number of days each year to its upkeep, clearing silt from the tunnels and repairing the vertical shafts. This was not seen as a burden, but as a sacred duty. The timing of these maintenance rituals was often woven into the cultural calendar, synchronized with seasonal festivals and celestial events, ensuring that the knowledge and the practice were passed down through generations. The rhythm of life itself was dictated by the flow of water. Canals were opened and closed according to a strict schedule, a rhythm so ingrained that it became a part of the community's heartbeat. This intricate social engineering reveals a profound truth. The most brilliant technological solution is only as strong as the human cooperation that sustains it. These civilizations understood that to master water, they first had to master the art of living together. These ancient water systems were never frozen in time. They were living, breathing networks designed for resilience in the face of a constantly shifting climate. The true genius of these civilizations lay not just in their initial engineering, but in their ability to adapt their systems to withstand unpredictable droughts and changing environmental patterns. They understood that relying on a single source of water was a recipe for collapse. Instead, they built portfolios of water security, A single city might depend on a primary qanat system, but it would also maintain a network of deep wells, intricate rooftop rainwater collectors, and diversion channels designed to capture the sudden bounty of seasonal floods. This diversification was their first line of defense. If the mountain springs feeding the qanat began to dwindle during a long dry period, the community could pivot to its wells or rely on the water stored from the last flood. They created a system with multiple layers of protection, ensuring that the failure of one source did not mean the end of the community. Their foresight extended to developing sophisticated early warning systems long before modern meteorology. Generations of observation taught them to read the subtle signs in their environment. They noticed that certain bird migrations, the timing of a specific plant's bloom, or even the behavior of insects could signal coming shifts in water availability. If a particular shrub flowered earlier than usual, it might indicate a shorter rainy season ahead, prompting the community to ration stored water more carefully. This deep ecological knowledge allowed them to anticipate scarcity and adjust their water management strategies proactively, not reactively. Perhaps their most critical innovation was designing redundancy directly into their infrastructure. A city's water network wasn't just one qanat, it was often several, tapping into different underground aquifers. If one tunnel became blocked or its source failed, others could shoulder the burden. Major cisterns were interconnected, so water could be shunted from a full reservoir to one that was running low. This built-in backup system was their emergency protocol, a fail-safe that could be activated during the most severe crises. This adaptive, multi-layered approach to survival offers a powerful lesson from the past. In our era of climate uncertainty, their strategies resonate with remarkable clarity. They teach us that resilience is not about building bigger walls against change, but about cultivating flexibility. It is about observing natural patterns with humility, diversifying our resources with wisdom, and designing systems that are robust enough to bend without breaking. Their legacy is a masterclass in navigating an unpredictable world, proving that the most enduring civilizations are those that learn to flow with the currents of change. The stone and clay of these ancient systems held secrets of their own. Beyond grand architectural designs, the true resilience of desert water management often lay in the microscopic world of material science. Ancient engineers developed specialized plasters and cements that were far more than simple mortar. They were complex recipes, carefully mixed from locally sourced clays, lime, and even plant ashes to create a lining that could endure brutal temperature swings without cracking. A single fissure in a cistern could mean the loss of an entire season's water supply, so their formulations had to be perfect. These linings were engineered to be nearly impermeable, a vital shield against seepage that locked precious water in place. But their innovation did not stop at simple containment. In many cultures, the quest for clean water led to the creation of sophisticated filtration systems. They constructed multi-layered filters using graded sand, crushed charcoal, and mats of specific plant fibers. As water percolated through this natural matrix, sediment was trapped and impurities were absorbed, delivering water that was not just available but safe. Perhaps one of the most elegant material innovations came in the form of everyday pottery. Potters in arid regions learned to engineer clay vessels with a precise, controlled porosity. When filled with water, the container would allow a minuscule amount to seep through its walls. As this moisture met the dry, desert air, it would evaporate instantly, drawing heat from the water stored inside. The result was a simple, effective cooling system, a clay refrigerator that could keep drinking water refreshingly cool under a blistering sun. Even the selection of stone for an aqueduct was a deliberate scientific choice. Builders understood that some stones were more resistant to erosion from flowing water, while others had thermal properties that helped regulate water temperature, preventing excessive algae growth. Every material was chosen with intention, each one a testament to a deep, localized knowledge of the environment. This was engineering from the ground up, a brilliant demonstration of how human ingenuity can transform the most basic earthly elements into tools of survival and comfort. The blueprint of a desert city was a map of its water. Every street, every building, every public square was positioned in a delicate dance with this precious resource. Urban planners did not simply build where land was flat. They built where water could be invited, guided, and celebrated. The very location of a settlement was the first and most critical water decision. A city would rise at the precise point where a qanat emerged from the ground, or where a reliable aquifer lay close to the surface, its entire layout radiating from that life-giving source. The land itself told them where to build, and they listened with expert ears. Even the paths people walked were part of this hydraulic design. Streets were not merely routes for travel, they were carefully graded to act as secondary watersheds. During a rare desert downpour, the slight incline of a narrow alleyway would channel rainwater away from homes and into a network of underground cisterns or towards central storage reservoirs. What seemed like a simple urban plan was in fact a city-scale rainwater harvesting system, turning a sudden storm from a potential hazard into a captured bounty. The architecture of individual homes also played its part. Thick earth walls provided natural insulation, reducing the need for water-intensive cooling methods. Courtyards were strategically planted with shade trees, creating microclimates that lowered ambient temperatures and minimized evaporation from small, personal gardens. Windows were positioned to catch cooling breezes while deflecting the harshest rays of the sun, a passive design that lessened the community's overall water demand. But the most visible expression of this water-centered philosophy was in the public spaces. Ornate fountains were not just decorative luxuries, they were the endpoints of the gravity-fed aqueduct system, demonstrating a constant, controlled flow. Public baths, known as hammams, were more than places for cleansing. They were social institutions that relied on a sophisticated understanding of water recycling and heating. The gentle sound of flowing water in a central plaza did more than just please the ear. It cooled the air, offered a moment of tranquility, and stood as a daily, living testament to the civilization's greatest achievement. This seamless integration of utility and beauty created an environment where survival and quality of life were one and the same. The city itself became an organism, its stone veins and clay arteries all working in concert to sustain life in an impossible landscape. The ingenuity of desert civilizations extended far beyond city walls and into the very soil they cultivated. To grow food in a landscape of thirst, farmers became master strategists, developing agricultural methods that treated every drop of water as a sacred resource. Their approach was not about flooding fields, but about precision delivery. They engineered systems that brought water directly to a plant's roots, bypassing the thirsty air and sun entirely. One of the most elegant solutions was clay pot irrigation. A farmer would bury an unglazed, porous clay pot near a valuable fruit tree or a cluster of vegetables, and then fill it with water. The pot acted as a slow, steady release system. Water would seep through its microscopic pores, drawn out by the drier soil surrounding it, creating a constant, moist zone exactly where the plant needed it. This method eliminated the massive evaporation loss of surface watering and encouraged plants to develop deep, strong root systems. It was a self-regulating, energy-free drip system crafted from earth and fire. This careful management of moisture extended to the very layout of the fields. Farmers practiced a form of botanical teamwork known as companion planting. They would intentionally group different species together based on their water needs and root architecture. A deep-rooted tree like a date palm might provide shade for shallow-rooted vegetables growing beneath it, reducing the soil temperature and the plant's water demand. Legumes that fixed nitrogen in the soil might be planted alongside grain crops, improving the health of the land so it retained moisture more effectively. This created a layered, efficient ecosystem where every plant helped its neighbors thrive, and no water was wasted on competition. Perhaps the most patient strategy was the practice of fallowing. Farmers understood that the land, like a person, needed to rest. They would divide their fields into sections, cultivating one while allowing another to lie fallow for a season, or sometimes even longer. During this rest period, the soil was not simply idle. Its natural moisture could slowly replenish, and nutrients would accumulate, making it far more productive and water-retentive when it was time to plant again. This long-term thinking ensured the land itself remained a living reservoir capable of sustaining generations. The most profound engineering, however, happened at the genetic level. Over countless growing cycles, these farmers became the world's first biotechnologists. They carefully saved seeds only from the plants that showed the greatest resilience to drought, the best yields with little water, or the strongest resistance to local pests. This process of selective breeding, repeated season after season, century after century, slowly transformed their crops. They developed robust, drought-resistant varieties of millet, barley, and dates that were uniquely adapted to their harsh homeland. They were not just cultivating plants, they were co-evolving with them, engineering life itself to flourish against the odds. This complete reimagining of agriculture reveals a civilization that did not fight the desert's scarcity, but instead learned to cultivate its own unique form of abundance. Yet the mastery of water was never just a practical matter of engineering or law. In the quiet moments of daily life, when a woman lowered her vessel into the cool depths of a stepwell, this act was more than simple collection. It was a gesture woven with meaning, a physical connection to something sacred. In the desert's relentless landscape, where water was the difference between life and a slow fading, it naturally ascended to the heart of spirituality itself. The very origin stories of these cultures often began with water. A single, life-giving spring might be described as the first act of creation, a gift from the gods that called the world into being from a barren void. Great rivers were not merely geographical features, they were divine pathways, the veins of the earth itself. Pantheons were filled with powerful water deities, from gentle providers of morning dew to fierce lords of the flash flood, each demanding respect and reverence. This spiritual framing transformed everyday water management into a form of devotion. The rituals that governed a community's water use were not arbitrary rules, they were sacred protocols. The precise timing for cleaning a qanat or the ceremonial opening of an irrigation gate became religious observances synchronized with lunar cycles or seasonal festivals. To participate was to honor the gods and ensure their continued blessing. This created a powerful, intrinsic incentive for conservation. To waste water was not merely foolish, it was an act of sacrilege, a disrespect to the divine source. This cultural framework was made visible in the landscape. Sacred groves were often preserved around the mouths of springs and along riverbanks. These protected zones, dedicated to a local spirit or deity, functioned as the earliest form of watershed management. By declaring the area holy, the community ensured that the trees anchoring the soil and filtering the water were never cut down. The technology of the qanat and the theology of the spring were two sides of the same coin, one practical, the other profound, both working in concert to protect the source of all life. The spiritual dimension of water provided the moral backbone for the entire system. It taught that water was a gift, not a possession, to be shared with gratitude and care. This deep cultural resonance ensured that the knowledge was not just remembered but cherished, passed down through generations as a sacred trust. The most resilient system, it turns out, is one that is woven into the soul of the people. A network of hidden wells and fortified way stations turned barren trade routes into rivers of commerce. Across the great deserts of Asia and Africa, the legendary Silk Road and its counterparts were not just paths across the sand, they were sophisticated hydraulic corridors. The flow of goods was entirely dependent on the flow of water. Caravan masters navigated not only by the stars but by a mental map of vital water points, each one a calculated day's journey from the last. These were not simple holes in the ground, they were strategic assets, meticulously maintained by the empires that controlled the routes. Deep cisterns were carved into bedrock to store seasonal rainwater, their openings often shielded from the evaporating wind and blowing sand. Guarded way stations grew around these oases, offering not just water but rest, repair, and security for the valuable cargo of silk, spices, and gems. The guardians of these posts held immense power, controlling access to life itself and collecting taxes for the water that fueled the entire economic engine. This system transformed the desert from an impassable barrier into a bridge. A merchant traveling from Persia to China moved through a landscape of shared necessity. At a desert way station, he might share a fire with a trader from the Mediterranean, exchanging not only goods but stories, beliefs, and technical knowledge. The design of a water-lifting device seen in one oasis could be carried 1,000 miles and replicated in another. The very concept of the qanat itself likely traveled along these routes, spreading a revolutionary technology from one civilization to the next. The rise and fall of entire cities were dictated by this hydraulic logic. A route would flourish if its water points were reliable and secure, attracting merchants and the wealth they carried. But if a climate shift dried up a critical well, or if political turmoil left the water points unguarded, the caravans would simply stop coming. The great desert metropolises we remember today were not accidents of geography. They were the direct result of this deliberate, empire-wide engineering. They stood at the convergence of trade and water, proving that in the ancient world, the control of a single resource could weave together the destinies of distant cultures and shape the very map of human connection. A stone channel, perfectly sloped for centuries, does not maintain itself. The true endurance of these water systems was forged in the hands of the communities who cared for them, generation after generation. This was a living technology, one that demanded not just initial brilliance but a continuous, intergenerational conversation between people and their infrastructure. The master water engineer was the guardian of this conversation. His expertise was a deep, localized science, learned not from books but through a long apprenticeship. A young learner would follow his teacher into the dark, echoing silence of a qanat, feeling the texture of the walls, listening for the subtle sounds of water movement that indicated a blockage or a weak spot. This knowledge was visceral, passed down through touch and experience. They learned to read the geology, understanding which rock layers promised water and which signaled a dry, fruitless dig. They memorized the seasonal rhythms, knowing when the mountain snowmelt would replenish the aquifers and when to prepare for a season of careful rationing. This was a holistic understanding of the entire watershed, from mountain peak to valley field, held in the memory of a single individual. The work of maintenance was a community ritual, synchronized with the celestial and agricultural calendar. Once a year, often during the dry season when water flow was at its lowest, the entire community would mobilize. Families who held water rights were also bound by a duty to contribute labor. They would descend into the vertical shafts, forming human chains to pass baskets of silt and debris up to the surface, clearing the tunnels so the water could flow freely. This was not seen as a chore, but as a vital collective action, a reaffirmation of their shared dependence on the system. The process was also a living classroom. As elders directed the work, they explained why a particular section of tunnel always collected silt, or how to repair a cracked lining with the traditional mix of clay and straw. The stories of past repairs, of legendary engineers who solved impossible problems, were woven into the labor, making the history of the system as tangible as the stones they handled. This careful, ritualized transfer of knowledge was the invisible mortar that held the entire physical structure together. It ensured that the sophisticated understanding of hydrology, geology, and community management did not die with its masters, but was breathed anew into each successive generation, allowing human ingenuity to flow as persistently as the water it guided. From the Andes to the Arabian Peninsula, the same brilliant solution to desert living appeared time and again. Civilizations separated by vast oceans with no possible contact looked upon their arid homelands and engineered almost identical answers. This global echo of ingenuity reveals a profound truth about human innovation. When faced with the universal challenge of thirst, the human mind, in isolation, often converges on the same elegant principles. Consider the Kanat of Persia and the filtration galleries of pre-Columbian Peru. Both systems tapped into subterranean water by digging a gently sloping tunnel back into a hillside aquifer. Both used a series of vertical shafts for construction and maintenance. They are, in function and form, nearly mirror images of one another, born worlds apart. This was not coincidence, but the logical outcome of understanding gravity and groundwater. The environment itself presented a puzzle, and these cultures, independently, found the same missing piece. Yet within this universal framework, local character always shone through. The materials differed, the methods for distributing the water reflected unique social structures, and the spiritual significance woven around the water source was deeply cultural. We see the same pattern with mountain terraces. The breathtaking stairways of Yemen's highlands find their twin in the sculpted slopes of the Andes. In both places, farmers confronted the same problem: water that rushed down steep inclines, eroding the soil instead of nurturing it. Their identical response was to build retaining walls, creating flat platforms that captured rainfall and forced it to seep deep into the earth. The universal principle was water and soil conservation, but the local execution was tailored to the specific stone, the unique crops, and the particular climate of each region. This comparative view teaches us something vital. It suggests that the fundamental laws of hydrology and human survival create a kind of convergent evolution for technology. Just as wings evolved independently in birds, bats, and insects for flight, so too did subterranean tunnels and stepped farms emerge independently to conquer aridity. The genius was not in inventing something entirely unique, but in reading the landscape so accurately that the most efficient solution became self-evident. This reveals a shared human capacity to observe, to learn from the land, and to engineer a future out of stone and water. The silent, monumental structures we admire today were animated by the quiet rhythms of daily life, rhythms often set by the hands of women. While the master engineers designed the grand qanats and stepwells, it was frequently the women who became the true stewards of the water's final journey into the home. Their role was not a minor one, but a deeply specialized form of expertise forged through intimate, daily necessity. They were the ones who carried the water vessels, who knew by touch and taste if the water from a particular cistern was pure, and who understood the subtle shifts in its quality with the changing seasons. This was a knowledge passed from mother to daughter, a living science of the household. They learned which clay pots kept water coolest, how to stretch a single vessel for cooking, cleaning, and gardening, and the precise moments to collect water when the public well was least crowded and the flow was strongest. In countless households, women managed a complex domestic economy of water, making countless small decisions about conservation that, when multiplied across a community, formed the true bedrock of its resilience. Their daily journeys to the well or the public fountain were not just chores, they were vital information-gathering missions. It was here, in the shade of the stepwell or at the mouth of the Kanat, that women shared observations. They noted if a spring's flow seemed weaker than the same time last year, or if the water had a new, unusual taste. This collective, informal monitoring network served as an early warning system for the entire community, flagging potential problems long before they became crises. To overlook this dimension is to see only the skeleton of a water system, its stone and clay, while missing the living pulse that flowed through it every single day. This partnership of grand engineering and daily stewardship created a complete system, one where the genius of the monument was matched by the wisdom of the home. The desert holds a stark physics lesson in every drop of water. Ancient engineers became masters of this invisible curriculum, learning to read the land's subtle language through generations of patient observation. They understood that the sun and wind were not just elements to endure, but active forces in a constant battle for moisture. Their entire approach to water management was a sophisticated dance with two fundamental principles: evaporation and infiltration. Every time water was exposed to air and sunlight, it began its journey back to the sky. This was a loss they could not afford, so they engineered solutions that fundamentally altered the equation. By moving water through underground qanats and storing it in deep, shaded cisterns, they created a protected environment where evaporation was slowed to a near standstill. They even timed their irrigation for the cool of the night, giving plants precious hours to drink before the sun could claim its share. This was not guesswork, it was precise, applied physics. Their understanding extended deep into the earth itself. They learned to identify landscape features that hinted at hidden water, a subtle dip in the terrain, or a particular cluster of resilient vegetation signaling a higher water table below. Before digging a single well, they could predict the depth they would need to reach the aquifer, a calculation born from accumulated experience. This knowledge of infiltration, how water moves through soil and rock, was their map to invisible rivers. Perhaps their most clever manipulation involved the very substance that often clogs modern systems: silt. They did not see sediment as a mere nuisance to be removed. They understood its role in the fluid dynamics of their channels. A carefully managed amount of silt could actually help seal the bottom of a canal, reducing seepage and making the flow more efficient. They designed their reservoirs with settling basins, areas where the water would slow down, allowing the heavier silt particles to fall out of suspension before the clearer water continued on its journey. This sediment was then often harvested and used as rich fertilizer for their fields, turning a potential problem into a valuable resource. Their genius lay in this deep collaboration with natural processes. They were not conquerors of the physics they observed, but its most attentive students. They learned the rules of the desert so thoroughly that they could work within them to create pockets of abundance, a testament to human ingenuity written in the silent, persistent flow of water against all odds. The power to command water was the power to command people. In the heart of the desert, a ruler's legitimacy was not measured by military conquest alone, but by their ability to fill the irrigation canals and keep the public fountains flowing. A leader who could guarantee water security earned the loyalty of farmers, merchants, and city dwellers alike. weaving their authority directly into the fabric of daily survival. This reality gave rise to what historians call the hydraulic state, a form of political organization where a centralized government took direct control over large-scale water projects. Think of the vast Kanat systems stretching for dozens of miles, or the monumental diversion dams built to tame flash floods. These were not community-level initiatives. They required a massive, coordinated labor force, a bureaucracy to manage it, and a treasury to fund it. The ruler who commissioned such a project was making a powerful statement. He was the provider, the protector, the one who could bend the desert itself to his will. His control over this infrastructure became the ultimate source of his political power, a tangible demonstration of his right to lead. The water court, where disputes over shares were settled, often derived its authority directly from the palace, ensuring that the ruler's law flowed as clearly as the water in the aqueducts. Yet this centralized model was not the only path. In many regions, water management remained a deeply decentralized affair, governed by local custom and community consensus. In these societies, the water master was not a royal appointee, but a respected elder chosen by the farmers themselves. The rules for distribution were encoded in oral traditions and reinforced through collective rituals. Maintenance was a shared responsibility, with each family contributing labor to clean the channels they relied upon. This system distributed power broadly, embedding it within the social structure of the village rather than concentrating it in a distant capital. The choice between a centralized hydraulic state and a decentralized cooperative often came down to geography and scale. A sprawling empire, reliant on long-distance trade routes, needed to secure water across vast territories, a task that demanded top-down control. A compact valley of farmers, however, could manage its local spring through direct cooperation. Both systems reveal a fundamental truth about water-scarce environments. Control over this single resource did more than just determine who could drink. It shaped the entire political landscape, deciding whether power would be held by a few at the center or shared among the many. The ultimate test of any system, from the mightiest empire to the smallest village, was not just its engineering brilliance, but its ability to turn the management of scarcity into a foundation for a stable and just society. Even the walls of a common home were engineered to participate in this silent, vital harvest. The architecture of the desert was never merely about shelter. It was an active component of the water system, a living membrane between the harsh climate and the needs of those within. The most fundamental feature was the roof, reshaped from a simple cover into a dedicated catchment basin. A typical flat roof was not truly flat, but had a subtle, calculated slope. Its surface was finished with a special, smooth plaster that shed water efficiently, channeling every precious drop into gutters that fed directly into a hidden, underground cistern. A single storm could replenish a family's private reserve for weeks. The very ground of the property was also part of this design. Courtyards were often gently sunken, their floors paved to direct any runoff toward a central drain or a seepage pit, ensuring that no moisture from a rare shower was lost to the thirsty surface soil. This was water collection woven into the fabric of daily movement, a constant, quiet gathering. The building's orientation was another critical calculation. Structures were positioned to maximize shade during the hottest parts of the day, with windows and doorways placed to catch cooling breezes. This passive ventilation created a comfortable interior climate without relying on water-intensive methods like evaporative cooling, dramatically reducing a household's overall water demand. The choice of building materials was a science in itself. Thick walls made from mud brick or rammed earth provided immense thermal mass. They absorb the sun's heat during the day, preventing it from penetrating the living spaces, and then slowly released that stored warmth during the cool desert night. This natural regulation maintained a stable temperature, and the porous nature of the materials also helped to moderate indoor humidity, pulling excess moisture from the air. From the grandest temple to the most humble dwelling, this hydraulic philosophy was universal. It reveals a society where the line between architect and water engineer was blurred, or perhaps never existed at all. Every design choice, from the grand sweep of a roof to the texture of a wall, was made with a dual purpose, creating a world where human habitat and water intelligence were one and the same. The desert landscape itself was a living map if you knew how to read it. Long before a single stone was laid for a qanat or a stepwell, ancient hydrologists practiced a sophisticated form of natural reconnaissance. They understood that the presence of water, even deep below the surface, left a distinct signature on the world above. This was not magic, but a deep, generational literacy in ecology. They learned to identify specific plant species that acted as natural signposts. Lush, green patches of certain reeds or tamarisk trees in an otherwise barren area were not a coincidence. These were phytophytes, plants with roots that could tap directly into the water table, their vibrant health broadcasting the secret of a hidden aquifer below. The behavior of the animal world offered another set of clues. The consistent flight paths of certain birds at dawn and dusk often led to secluded springs or waterholes. Observant engineers would note the locations where insects like certain bees congregated, or the burrows of particular desert creatures, as these animals instinctively built their homes within reach of moisture. Even the color and texture of the soil told a story. Dark, damp-looking patches of earth in the early morning, known as damp grounds, could indicate shallow groundwater. They learned to recognize rock formations that acted as natural dams, trapping water in subterranean basins, and they could identify the specific types of sedimentary layers that were most likely to serve as aquifers, storing water like a stone sponge. This profound ecological knowledge dramatically reduced the risk and labor of their projects. Instead of digging dozens of random test pits in a desperate search for water, they could survey the land, read the biological signs, and pinpoint the most promising location for a mother well with astonishing accuracy. This integration of biology and engineering represents one of humanity's earliest forms of ecological design thinking. It was a philosophy that saw the environment not as a collection of separate resources, but as a single, interconnected system. The water, the plants, the animals, and the soil were all part of one story, and by learning to read that story, these engineers could write their own chapter of survival directly into the land. Even the most brilliant water system was not immune to the desert's ultimate test. A prolonged drought could silence the most reliable qanat, and a sudden earthquake could shatter the sturdiest cistern. These societies understood that true resilience meant planning for the unthinkable, building layers of defense against the day their primary systems might fail. Their survival depended not just on daily management, but on a sophisticated culture of crisis management. At the heart of this was the concept of the emergency reserve. Many communities designated specific, deeply protected water sources as sacred and strictly off-limits during normal times. These were not merely storage tanks, but entire springs or sealed underground chambers, their existence and location a carefully guarded secret known only to a few elders. This was their final insurance policy, a life-saving resource to be unlocked only by communal consensus in the face of true catastrophe. When a crisis was declared, a strict protocol of rationing would immediately take effect. Water masters, guided by long-established laws, would recalibrate the allocation for every family and every field. Water for irrigation of non-essential crops would be suspended entirely, and domestic use would be reduced to the bare minimum for survival. The entire community's rhythm would shift to one of profound conservation. But what happened when even the emergency reserves began to dwindle? Their planning extended beyond their own borders. They developed formal agreements with neighboring communities for shared resource access during hardship. A village whose springs had failed might have a long-standing pact with a settlement in a nearby mountain valley, allowing for the temporary migration of people and livestock until the crisis passed. These were not acts of desperation, but the execution of pre-negotiated social contracts that turned potential conflict into cooperation. Alongside these practical measures, they cultivated psychological resilience through ritual. Ceremonies for rain were not just pleas to the gods, they were powerful communal events that reinforced solidarity and hope. By coming together to perform these ancient rites, they strengthened the social bonds that were just as vital as water itself in a crisis. This multifaceted approach reveals a profound insight. Sustainability for these civilizations was not about creating a perfect, failure-proof system. It was about building a society that was agile enough to absorb shock, to bend without breaking when the inevitable failure occurred. Their legacy teaches us that planning for breakdowns is not a sign of pessimism, but the very essence of wisdom in an unpredictable world. The silent, gravity-fed logic of the Kanat is finding new life in our era of pumping and pipelines. As modern societies confront depleted aquifers and energy-intensive water systems, we are looking back to these ancient models not for nostalgia, but for their profound ecological intelligence. The principle of gently guiding groundwater to the surface without massive energy input is inspiring a new generation of sustainable hydrology. Engineers now study these systems to design managed aquifer recharge projects, where stormwater is deliberately directed underground to replenish those very same hidden reservoirs, mimicking the natural infiltration that fed the ancient mother wells. This is not a rejection of modern technology, but a fusion of old and new, where satellite data helps us locate the best places to practice this ancient art of water banking. The fight against soil erosion on sloping lands is also being guided by ancient wisdom. Modern permaculture and regenerative agriculture have rediscovered the fundamental genius of the terrace. The same stone walls that once held soil and water on Andean mountainsides are now recognized as one of the most effective tools for combating desertification today. By slowing runoff and maximizing infiltration, these structures rebuild soil health and create microclimates, exactly as they did for forgotten civilizations. We are relearning that the most resilient agriculture often works with the contour of the land, not against it, a lesson written in stone across countless forgotten hillsides. Our most ambitious green city projects in arid regions consciously echo the past. The concept of a city as an integrated water catchment system, where every roof and street is designed to channel precious rainfall, is a direct inheritance from the hydraulic urban planning of Petra and other desert capitals. Modern architects are now specifying porous pavements and green roofs to replicate the natural water absorption of those ancient, graded streets and courtyards. The goal remains the same: to see a city not as a consumer of water, but as an active participant in its own water cycle. Perhaps the most striking revival is occurring where the air itself holds moisture. The simple fog nets of the Atacama have evolved into high-tech arrays using advanced polymer meshes, capable of harvesting drinking water from coastal fog in places like Morocco and Chile. These modern installations are scaling a timeless principle: proving that the most elegant solutions are often those that work in harmony with an environment's inherent conditions. This global re-engagement with ancient hydraulics reveals a pivotal shift in our thinking. We are beginning to understand that these were not primitive methods, but highly refined adaptations born from centuries of deep observation. They offer us more than just retro technology. They provide a blueprint for a different relationship with our planet, one based on collaboration and long-term resilience. In their quiet, persistent flow, we find answers to some of our most pressing modern questions. The monumental waterworks of the past are often wrapped in a haze of legend. We envision them as perfect, self-sustaining gifts from a forgotten golden age, but the historical reality is far more compelling and far more human. These systems were not magical constructs that ran flawlessly for centuries. They were hard-won achievements that demanded relentless, back-breaking upkeep. The romantic idea of a lost wisdom, a single secret that vanished with its creators, misses the true nature of this knowledge. It was not a static set of instructions locked away in a vault. It was a living, breathing practice, constantly adapted and refined by each generation to meet new challenges, a conversation with the environment that never truly ended. The belief that these civilizations lived in perfect harmony with their environment also requires a more nuanced view. While their engineering was brilliant, it was not always without consequence. There is evidence in some regions that extensive irrigation over many generations led to a gradual buildup of salts in the soil, slowly poisoning the very land they sought to cultivate. In other areas, the heavy demand for wood to fuel kilns for plaster or to support mining operations for construction could lead to local deforestation, which in turn altered the microclimate and the land's ability to retain moisture. These were not acts of wanton destruction, but rather the unintended outcomes of large-scale, long-term settlement. They show us that even the most sophisticated societies could face ecological limits, a cautionary tale about the long-term footprint of any civilization. Furthermore, the construction of the largest projects, such as the vast Kanat networks sponsored by empires, was not always a story of voluntary communal labor. Historical records and archaeological evidence indicate that in some instances, these monumental undertakings relied on forced labor, including individuals working under conditions of servitude. This complex reality adds a difficult layer to our admiration. It reminds us that the water that flowed so gracefully into a city square sometimes came at a profound human cost, compelling us to view these achievements not with simple celebration, but with a sober understanding of the societal structures that made them possible. Acknowledging these complexities does not diminish the brilliance of ancient hydrology. Instead, it elevates it from a myth into a genuine human accomplishment, with all the struggles, compromises, and lessons that entails. By looking clearly at both their triumphs and their limitations, we gain not a blueprint to copy, but a deeper well of wisdom from which to draw. We learn that the ultimate engineering challenge is not just about moving water, but about building societies that are equitable, adaptable, and conscious of their long-term relationship with the world they inhabit. These ancient blueprints for survival are not relics. They are a living library of strategies, offering profound insights for our own era of climate uncertainty and growing water stress. The core principle of diversification is more relevant than ever. Instead of relying on a single massive reservoir or a distant river, the ancient model shows the resilience of a portfolio approach. A modern city could blend treated wastewater for irrigation and industry, harvested rainwater for gardens and flushing, and carefully managed groundwater for drinking. This mirrors the ancient practice of using qanats, wells, and flood capture simultaneously, creating a system where the failure of one source is not a catastrophe. This leads to another key idea, matching the quality of water to its purpose. We spend immense energy and resources purifying every drop to drinking standard, only to use most of it for activities that do not require such purity. The ancient logic was beautifully pragmatic. They used clean spring water for drinking, while directing silt-laden floodwater to fields where it would also fertilize the soil. Today, this means we could design buildings with dual plumbing, using minimally treated greywater from sinks and showers for toilets and outdoor use, preserving our highest quality water for where it is truly needed. This is not a step backwards, but a leap in efficiency. The very structure of our water systems is also ripe for reconsideration. The ancient world favored distributed networks over centralized monoliths. A city sustained by many community-managed qanats and cisterns is inherently more resilient than one dependent on a single, massive treatment plant and a vulnerable pipeline. If one part of the network fails, the rest can continue to function. This distributed model empowers local communities to manage their own resources, fostering a sense of ownership and responsibility that is often lost in large, impersonal utility systems. This brings us to the most vital element, the social dimension. The brilliant technology of the qanat was inseparable from the social cooperation that maintained it. Our modern challenges cannot be solved by engineering alone. Rebuilding community-based water governance, where local stakeholders have a direct voice in management and conservation, creates a foundation of trust and shared purpose. It revives the role of the water master not as a distant bureaucrat, but as a custodian accountable to the community. This social framework is essential for the intergenerational transfer of knowledge, ensuring that the wisdom of conservation is not just written in a manual, but lived and practiced. Ultimately, these ancient systems teach us to work with natural processes, not against them. They infiltrated water into the ground instead of channelizing rivers in concrete. They harvested fog instead of trying to wish for more rain. This philosophy of collaboration with the environment is the heart of contemporary ecological design. It asks us to see a city not as a separate entity from its watershed, but as an integrated part of it. In an age of deepening scarcity, the most advanced solutions may not involve more powerful pumps or bigger dams, but a return to this deeper intelligence, one that finds abundance through understanding and resilience through a respectful partnership with the natural world. The story of these desert civilizations is ultimately a testament to the limitless potential of the human spirit when confronted with necessity. They did not see a barren wasteland, but a landscape filled with hidden potential, waiting for the right key to unlock it. Their greatest invention was not the qanat or the stepwell in isolation, but a complete philosophy of survival, one that wove together precise engineering, deep ecological understanding, and resilient social cooperation into a single, enduring fabric. They teach us that true sustainability has never been a question of abundance, but a practice of profound intelligence and respect for the systems that sustain life. As we navigate our own complex relationship with water in a changing climate, their legacy is not a set of outdated blueprints to be copied, but a powerful source of inspiration. It is a reminder that scarcity can be the mother of our most elegant and enduring innovations. The silent, persistent flow of their ancient water channels carries a message of hope across the centuries, proving that even in the most impossible of landscapes, human ingenuity can always find a way to make life not just endure, but